Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. For today's video, we're going to be discussing a topic that is very popular on the interwebs, and that is the topic of quotas for police agencies. What are we talking about when we're talking about quotas? We're talking about whether or not police officers are required to write a certain number of tickets per month, make a certain number of arrests per month, whether or not you get a toaster at the end of the year if you make the right number of arrests and write the right number of tickets. All of those things. We're going to be discussing quotas, and we're going to be discussing whether or not ticket quotas are legal or if they are illegal, whether or not they should be legal, and if a ticket quota is a good measure of whether or not an officer is good at their job or qualified to be a police officer. If you would like to play a game with me, please go down in the comments below right now and give me your opinion on ticket quotas, whether or not they're a good thing, whether or not they should be legal. And at the end of the video, I'm actually going to give you my opinion on ticket quotas. And if you've been following me for any amount of time, you probably already know my opinion on that, but we're going to get into it here in just a moment. The reason we're discussing this topic today is because there was actually a law proposed in the state of Ohio to ban ticket and arrest quotas. This is a really interesting topic to me because I've been growing up almost my entire life under the assumption that ticket quotas were already illegal. And when people talked about ticket quotas, I would usually kind of clap back at them like, you know, those are already illegal. Shut up. You're a moron. Yada, yada, yada. Turns out ticket quotas, at least in the state of Ohio, have not been illegal, and they are not illegal, but there are a couple of lawmakers that are trying to make it so. The lawmakers that we're talking about, I've got the House bill or House page up right here. It's hard to fit everything on the screen at the same time, so forgive me, but they have introduced, it's House Bill 333 in the state of Ohio House, and it's a law that prohibits law enforcement quotas for arrests and citations. The sponsors of this bill are this woman right here. Her name is Bride Rose Sweeney. She is a Democrat House member, state House member from the northern part of the state. I looked her up before. I think it's Westlake, Ohio, but don't quote me on that. All I know is that she's a Democrat and she's one of the people that's sponsoring this bill. And then you have the gentleman down below, Kevin D. Miller. He is a Republican in the Ohio House. And he is also he's a co-sponsor of this bill. One of the interesting things about Representative Kevin Miller here, if you can't tell by his appearance and his haircut, he is actually a retired Ohio State Highway Patrolman. So it's really interesting to me that someone who is a retired Ohio State Highway Patrolman is actually sponsoring a bill to make it illegal for police agencies to have ticket quotas. I have a little bit of the bill that I want to show you. If you haven't seen a bill when it's introduced, you can see the stages that it's at. It's been introduced to the House. It's in committee currently, and they're going to go through the debate process, then send it over to the Senate. We'll see if this thing ever becomes law. But here's an actual copy of the bill. I'm not going to read very much of it, but I just wanted to get down to let's see, this paragraph right here is, I think, the blood and guts of the bill. It says basically no law enforcement agency or official shall establish or maintain, formally or informally, a plan utilizing a quota as the basis to which, by which to evaluate, promote, compensate, transfer, or discipline a local or state police officer, whoever the law enforcement agency is. Basically, it's a law that says as a police agency, you cannot have a quota. You can't impose a quota on your officers, your deputies, whatever, saying that they need to get a certain number of arrests per month, a certain number of citations per month, anything like that. And you cannot base their ability to write a large amount of tickets on their compensation or their promotion status or something like that. Basically, you can't create an incentive for a law enforcement officer to go out there and write more tickets, a financial incentive to. I'll leave my opinion out of it for now. So one interesting thing about this is that the local Fraternal Order of Police has actually come out and written a letter in support of this bill, and I have that in front of me right here. This is a letter from Brian Steele, who is the president of FOP Lodge 9, which is the largest FOP organization in the state of Ohio. And, in it, he says, I'm writing to express my support for this bill. I don't remember how much I wanted to read from this, but we'll just go through a couple of paragraphs here, because I think he does a very good job of putting the law enforcement side of this argument out there. And that'll serve a purpose later on in the video. It says, as the president of the largest local police union in Ohio, I believe that the primary objective of law enforcement should always be the preservation of public safety and the fostering of trust between police officers and the communities they serve. Quotas, which maintain a certain number of arrests and citations within a certain period, undermine this objective by shifting the focus from genuine public safety to arbitrary numerical targets. He's just saying, as a police officer, as a law enforcement officer, we should be doing things to promote public safety and trust between law enforcement and the community, not just arbitrary numerical targets. Requiring police officers to meet quotas places unnecessary pressure on them, distracts them from their ability to exercise professional discretion, and this pressure can lead to negative interactions between law enforcement and community members, ultimately eroding the public trust. As Representative Sweetie aptly stated, quotas not only add unnecessary pressure to an already difficult job, but they also harm police-community relations. That's the stance of the Fraternal Order of Police, and I believe that most law enforcement officers, at least in Central Ohio, would probably agree with the statements that he made right there. Now, the article that I found that's addressing this actually has a little bit of both sides, and I think it's important to show what both sides of this argument are thinking and use those arguments to form our judgment of whether or not this is the right thing, and also judge the motivations of the people who are, arguing for these things. So it starts off by having a quote from a member of the community. This person, Nazia Taylor, said, "Growing up, that's what I'd been told. They have to hit a quota. They'll pull you over for anything at the end of the month. That's why they have to meet their quota." And that's something that I've been hearing my whole life, and definitely as long as I've been a police officer. Oh, you pulled me over at the end of the month, I'm definitely getting a ticket because you have to meet your quota. I personally have never worked for an agency that has any kind of quota or anything like that. I've been a police officer for 13 years, and I'm at a point in my career where I might write 4 or 5 tickets in a year. If I had a quota, I would have been fired a long time ago. This particular article has a poll that they posted in there. 79% of the people that were polled in this poll think that ticket quotas are a bad thing. Here's a short statement from FOP President Brian Steele again. "The reality is these officers are feeling pressure to write tickets, and if they don't, they're going to be disciplined for that." Now, for the counter argument, we're going to bring in Whitehall Police Chief Mike Crispin. I should have downloaded a picture to put up on the screen of him right now. I'm not going to do that. We're going to try to cover this at a high altitude. We're going to dial down into Whitehall Police Chief Mike Crispin in a later video, because there's actually a lot to expand upon here, and I don't want to make this video all about him. But here is his statement on whether or not there should be a law against ticket quotas. He says, "I think House Bill 333 would make us an unbelievably more unsafe state. In any profession, there's a percentage of people who do a lot of work. There is a percentage of people who are in the middle, and there are a percentage of people you always have to manage and get them to do work. What this bill would do is make it practically illegal for us to manage those people at the bottom." And then he went on further. He goes on a lot in this particular article. It says, "We have an epidemic of crime. Until I saw this bill, I was unaware of an epidemic of quotas." So we're getting pretty close to the end of the video here. And what Whitehall Police Chief Mike Crispin is saying, and I think this is a good jumping off point for my opinion of ticket quotas, is he is saying that, ticket quotas are important to show what officers are out there working and which officers are not out there working. And my opinion on that is, you know, any moron can go out and write tickets. If you put a quota on me that says, hey, you work 5 days a week, you're required to write 5 tickets a week. That's 4 weeks out of the month. That's five times 4 is 20. 20 tickets a month. That's what you're required to do. I think that any moron, any robot can go out and get in his car, go out, write 5 tickets a day or 5 tickets in a week, 20 tickets in a month. Does that make that person a good officer? There might be other officers that are out there doing a lot of work. They're investigating dope houses. They're out there working with the homeless people, the prostitutes, the drug addicts, all that stuff, gathering information on where the drug houses are, tracking down people who are committing violent crimes. You know, we're talking about car thieves and robberies and all that stuff, sitting up on houses, waiting for criminals to come and go, developing patterns of activity. If you're doing those things as a police officer, you're not going to have a lot of time to go out and write tickets. If you have a police officer that is solely responsible for shutting down a drug house, which is a hub of violent crime and violent activity, if you have an officer who spends an entire month trying to do that, but he doesn't write any tickets, you're going to then punish that officer. And then you have another officer who gets up every day, goes out and gets his cup of coffee, sits up on a busy road with his radar, writes people for going 8 miles an hour over the speed limit, writes 5 tickets a day. He's writing over 100 tickets a month. By your performance measures, you're saying that the officer that gets his cup of coffee and sits on the side of the road with radar is a productive officer, and the officer that's spending all that time investigating dope houses and stuff like that is a bad officer. I don't think that those two things compute. And this is one of the very frustrating things it's something that frustrates me quite a bit about people in general when they talk to me about their experiences with police officers and what they think about the police, is because I think that the concept of a police officer to members of the general public and the interactions that people have with police officers from members of the general public is that they always remember that time that they were pulled over by a police officer and they had a dispute with a police officer about why they were pulled over. I have those stories as well. But the funny thing is, I've been a police officer for 13 years now in a very high crime area, and I almost never do traffic stops anymore. I don't pull over a lot of cars. There's a lot of reasons for that. For one, the type of crime that I'm responding to constantly in the area where I work doesn't involve motor vehicles. The types of things that are having an impact on public safety in the area where I work rarely has anything to do with motor vehicles. Motor vehicle accidents, serious injuries, fatalities in the area where I work they happen like once or twice a week. We'll have a bad accident, but it's not a big deal. That's not what the majority of the problems are. The majority of the problems in the neighborhood where I work are just the drug addicts and homeless people out there, committing theft offenses to support their drug habits. And we can go through all of the reasons why that stuff exists, but I'm here to tell you that traffic is not one of them. The other side of that, and I've got some examples, I should have showed this before, but I always forget what I'm doing when I'm making these videos. So here it is. This is actually a letter of reprimand from the Whitehall Police Department to one of their officers. And I can go ahead and zoom in on it. Basically it says, we expect you to do certain things for public safety and you're not meeting our expectations. And this is an officer being reprimanded for not having the right number of arrest reports or citations. Saying that the average person on that shift has 29 arrests during that same time period, has 24 reports, and has written 36 citations, and he has a lot less. This is something that would absolutely affect me and the way I do my job, because I can tell you for a fact that I respond to just as many calls for service, if not more, than anybody else on my precinct or on my zone. The likelihood of me taking a legal enforcement action on one of those calls is probably lower than the majority of the officers on my precinct or on my zone. I believe that I have a way of communicating with people in a way that can change their behavior in a more efficient manner than arresting them or writing them a citation. Does that make me a better or worse officer than the person that's out there charging everybody with crimes? Particularly in a county where the majority of these citations and criminal charges that we're writing people for are going to be dismissed at the end of the day. All you're doing, in my opinion, with writing excessive citations and arresting people for crimes that you know the local judiciary is not going to hold people accountable for, all you're doing is basically creating an annoyance. You're annoying the community. You're also tying up the court system that would be better served by, maybe some of these domestic violence charges and things that get pled down to criminal mischief. Maybe those perpetrators would actually be held accountable if the prosecutors and the courts weren't so bogged down with officers that are unnecessarily filing these petty misdemeanor charges in order to meet their quota. I think that pretty much sums up my opinion on ticket quotas. I think that's all I'm going to say today. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments below what you think about ticket quotas and what you think about the Whitehall police chief and his tactic and his opinion on what makes an officer a good, productive officer. Because I can tell you that if I were to work in Whitehall, he would not consider me a good or productive officer. And everybody that watches this channel already knows how I interact with the public and what kind of officer I am. So that's it for me today, guys. Thank you for watching. I'll talk to you soon.